says we're good when you're ready.
It slows down a little bit.
And we're
All right, we're approaching the 7 o'clock. If everybody would please rise, we'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As we get started this evening, please be mindful of our mission, our vision and our mission. Our vision, inspiring all learners to be engaged and successful, and our mission to provide an enriching environment to meet the needs of all learners. Our core values of respect, integrity, students first, and excellence. All right, we'll start this evening with a public hearing before we get into the agenda part. So we'll open the public hearing on the proposed 22-23 school calendar year at about 7:01.
in our public hearing officially, there's 3 things to always approve on a district calendar, and it's hours versus days, which this calendar is based on 1,080 student hours, and then start date and end date, which would be the start date of August 23rd and end date of the 24th of May. There is a lot in between, and certainly for discussion, but those are what you are approving, are those 3 things, when we get to that later in the meeting.
Are there any questions or any comments from anyone here? All right, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing then about 7:03. We'll get into the agenda. We need a motion then to approve the agenda. We do have one thing just to make mention, at least. The Season Center's here to talk to us during the communications to the board. So we need a motion for approval. Thank you, Gloria. Do we have a second? Second. Thanks, Brent. We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll go in then hearing of delegations. We don't have any. Communications to our board. Seasons, if you guys are ready, we'd have you come to the microphone and update us on your work with the school.
So I'll introduce our speakers tonight. Haley Kofrin is our YSW, our youth service worker. Leah Wilhite is our mental health therapist. They work in all 5 of our buildings, and Michelle Teesfield is from Season Center, and they're going to talk about some of the programs that they've brought to Algona Community School Districts and the great things they're doing with our kids. Thank you.
So I am a licensed mental health therapist, so I provide individual therapy. So any student who would normally be seen here in the community, or maybe since we're rural, like Mason City, Fort Dodge, Emmitsburg, they no longer have to leave the school to provide that service. I can provide that service here in the school. So currently I have about 40 clients, depending on their needs. You can see them once a week, some every other week, some just once a month. I collaborate with the principals, the guidance counselors, teachers, parents, some have DHS workers, psychiatrists, just to provide the best care support for them. Some also see Haley, so Haley and I collaborate quite a bit to make sure that their needs are met best. I'm also available for crisis, so sometimes a guidance counselor will call me and say, hey, we have a situation, and then I go down to their office or wherever the student is and provide that crisis support.
I'm Haley. I'm a youth service worker here. I work in all 5 buildings. I provide skill-based services, so I work a lot with social, emotional skills, coping skills, anxiety, depression, and I do that through artistic activities, games activities, workbooks. I am also a behavioral health intervention service worker, so I am able to go into families' homes and do family sessions as well.
Our sheet says 64 students served, but we ran numbers today and we are at 59 clients that we've currently seen in the 6 months since we've been here. did, it says there at the bottom of the sheet, some group work. We've kind of been in collaboration, with all the counselors about possibly doing some anxiety groups here in the high school. Whatever they feel like their need is, we're able to do that also. Anyone have questions
Yeah,
for
does
us?
anybody have questions?
How do you identify the kids that would benefit? Are they referred, self-referred to you, or are they referred by, because they've been identified by teachers or administration, or gotten in trouble, or what's the trigger to get them involved in your services?
I wouldn't say that there is an exact protocol. We like to encourage that through the school, that the school counselors are involved in that process, just because they have better knowledge. However, there are teachers that reached out, parents that have called seasons directly, parents that I know from the community have called me, and then we just staff it. Then Haley and I will go to the school counselor, go to the principal and say, hey, we had a parent call us, what are your thoughts on this? So I wouldn't say there's necessarily a specific one, because we want to make sure that we're available to reach anyone that feels like it's immediate.
So if a student is identified and like people recognize that they would benefit from your services, is there a call that's made to parents and say, hey, we have these services available, and then the parent consents, or how does that?
Correct. So if it comes from the school directly, we have a referral form, and they contact the parents first and say, we have this service available, are you interested? Then they come to us, or they send us the referral form, then we call the parent.
When we started this process, we put them with our counselors to kind of give us, one channel. But as they've been here, as they described, we have many channels, and it really has kind of broke down barriers to make them available for kids. They're really busy, and we have some natural barriers that exist, one being 5 buildings, them getting to so many places. We have had a gift from the Cassuth County Care Team and an individual family in town who's provided us with $50,000 for us to have a second YSW for the next 3 years as well. So right now, Michelle has advertised that position, and we're excited to add that person, and which will just allow us to get to more people. I would imagine the number of people we're seeing right now, we're full all the time, right? There's
So you serve just the Algona district?
Correct.
Were our school counselors doing some of this before? Do we have an opportunity to get this counseling service?
I would probably trying to.
Okay.
Being able to get to the number of kids and at the level they are, no. We didn't have mental health therapists, we didn't have that, so specifically what Leah's doing, no. The answer would just be no for that. Working with kids on skills and some of those other things, probably as much as they could. Our elementary and middle school principals, our guidance counselors are in the classroom most of the time. High school are busy and scheduling. They also do some teaching as well, but it's not even close to the level that these guys are.
So it's giving our counselors some more time to do some different things.
Yeah, I don't know if they have more time because I don't know if they had a lot of time to do this kind of work previously.
I think it's important. It's a service that some kids just weren't accessing because of availability in Cassuth County. There's not a lot of therapy providers without traveling a minimum of 30 minutes. There are some, but there's not a lot to cover all of those needs. And so now some kids are able to access services that they weren't otherwise able to, or they're only missing that one period a day versus half a day or a full day of school to give those mental health services.
How many kids do you feel like out of the 69 that were able to access this today versus before? So how many maybe ones are they're just not traveling anymore, and how many do we, and just even ballpark wise, are we able to touch by having it in-house?
I can tell you, when I was doing full-time services, I probably had a handful of Algona kids, and I probably had a minimum of that on a wait list. So
triggers of all of the, in your guys' opinion, all of the needs that are out there now?
I think it's definitely an environmental change. We have a lot of environmental changes that kids are experiencing, whether it be in our districts or just society as a whole, you know, social media, all of the different aspects. And we can all pick something and make that your platform for why, but the fact is that it's just more.
Yeah, any further questions?
Are there certain metrics you guys look at, like, with the kids you guys are serving to say, you know, this has been successful, and you know, things that we can be gauging, and so that's one question. My second question is, as you guys look towards the future, what other needs do you see that maybe we're not able to provide today, but the board maybe should be thinking about into the future?
All of the clients that I see have a treatment plan with measurable goals. Those have to be reviewed every so often. They're shared with the clients, they're shared with parents or whoever, you know, is interested in that. And then we address that and we go over that and we work towards meeting those goals. I will tell you that therapy is a pretty slow process, and it depends how engaged they are, how much they identify that there is a struggle for themselves. And a lot of times kids come with multiple problems. So, you know, it's identifying what's the base layer and starting from that and working up. So yes, I would say that there's kind of always those goals that we're measuring and monitoring to make sure that there's some type of progress.
We also find it really important for seasons to make sure that our clinicians are trained with evidence-based practices so that we have a criteria that when you're using this modality, this is what we're looking, these are the marks that we're looking for progression and change. So we're able to monitor that as well if the skills, if the different modalities are being used to fidelity. So that's, Leah will be going through some pretty intense training here in a couple months for 2 different modalities through EMDR and Theraplay. So those are all very specific processes that get used in therapy. So that's another way that we gauge progress as well.
And then the second part is just, you know, you guys started this fall, right?
Yeah.
So having been at it for, you know, 5 months now, maybe, what do you guys see or maybe needing some additional support or ideas the board should start kind of using this thinking about?
Sure. I would say our probably number one need, and you probably heard this from lots of different people, is space. But when we first started, Haley and I were in the one office in the library. Obviously, we can't share space. And the library is not a very confidential or private way to enter and exit my room. So there's lots of kiddos that feel really uncomfortable about that. We've made it work. Haley now has an office in the middle school, so now we have our own spaces there. But all of the elementary schools we share with Christy Roberts. So we have to be very proactive in seeing what her schedule is, and then when the schedules change, because they're on a 6-day rotation compared to the high school and the middle school. We just have to make sure that we're collaborating with what our schedules are so that our availabilities don't crisscross. I will say though that everyone has been really helpful with that. Principals are very open to using their offices as long as we communicate, so we make it work. And then, of course, I mean, if you could have more of me, my caseload's already full. So I have a waiting list, and constantly people asking questions about, well, I have these people on my list, when can we get these kids in? So I think it will always be a need.
How big is the wait list right now?
I'd say 4 or 5.
And they've done a really nice job of communicating with us. Space is an issue. Jeff and I, it's a consistent piece that we're looking at, especially out here, to find available space. Gosh, I say especially out here, it's even more difficult at our elementaries. But we're still throwing around ideas and options to provide some more supplemental space in the buildings.
We also have asked Mr. Carter to send out different surveys for us at the beginning of the year, and we'll do that again at the end of the year to kind of see where things were at the beginning and now where they're at.
Well, we thank you for all the work and thank you for your time tonight. If there's any further questions? All right, well, you're welcome to stay. We're gonna move on then with the agenda, and we'll move into the consent items. And I know you received your packet to look over throughout the weekend, and Tom, you had a chance to look at the board bills?
Reviewed the bills on Friday, they were all good.
Okay.
Four bills are added tonight,
Yep.
approved.
Okay, thank you.
Para. It's a license renewal. What kind of software is that?
What was the name, Jay? Hapara? Say that again?
Kids off their computers.
Oh,
Is that the one
yes.
that shows the screens?
Teachers could use it
Yes,
to get kids
yes.
back to.
Okay.
It's what we use to monitor the Chromebooks. Yes.
Any other further questions?
I'd asked Mary Beth too about the KRHC. I thought that was kind of a big bill for the January nursing, and she said it was a 2-month contract.
Okay. Any further questions? All right, hearing none, we need a motion for approval.
I do a motion to approve the consent items.
Thanks, Tom. Do we have a second?
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second, and do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Move right into the superintendent's report, Joe.
I'm going to start with kind of a financial update for my report. I put some charts. I gave you a paper copy as well as they're on the screen. These are things that we pull directly from Forecast 5. Mary Beth uploads all of our financials into Forecast 5 every month. So these are accurate, not just projections like we use as a tool when we're talking about forecasting out for 5 years. These are accurate numbers with dollars that we're currently using. The chart below shows our total revenue year to date, as well as the percentages. I highlighted it in yellow, so our total revenue is a little over $9 million to date. You can see where that compares to previous years. The chart below that is expenditures. Also, I highlighted that box in yellow. Our total expenditures, $8.7 million, higher than last year, and we expect our expenditures to be higher than last year, simply because of increases in salaries, also increases in positions. Also, our revenue, we claim back our ESSER dollars quarterly. So I think we've only actually had one, or not even one yet. So we don't even have ESSER dollars reflected in this revenue yet. So although we're spending them. So you can see that there's certainly a great balance for us in terms of expenditures and revenues. And we knew that for this year, that there was going to be a large surplus because of some of those ESSER funds and sharing incentive dollars.
Turn in receipts for those quarterly?
Yeah, we submit it to Department of Ed, and then they reimburse that back. Keep continuing into the second page. That image shows our top 10 general fund sources year to date. That's just interesting to see where our money comes from. Most of it comes from property taxes. 3.8 million of the revenues we've received so far come from local property taxes. 2.8 million comes from the state foundation aid. Now remember, we review this starting next month when we were talking about certified budget, that these two numbers, they're always going to equal the same. Whether we have less in property taxes and more in state aid, or more in property taxes and less in state aid, the two will always equal. In our district, we are very property rich. We have high tax valuations because of our very valuable agricultural land. So more of our revenue is generated from property taxes than maybe some other districts. But always interesting to see where is it actually coming from. A good question was asked in agenda review. teacher leadership state aid, that comes from our, actually the salary improvement program. That's a TSS that was passed, I think about 15 years ago, when they gave additional funds to districts to make sure you have a minimum state teaching salary. So you use those funds to get any teachers up to that minimum who weren't. We don't have any, the minimum is below what we hire people at, so we don't have to use it there. So it is balanced equally throughout our district. And that's local decision on how you, what you do with that teacher salary supplement. The teacher leadership aid, that's the TLC grant that started 5 years ago, 6 years ago, which funds our TLC program, our instructional coaches, PLC leads, and social emotional leads, and so on. Continuing down, this bar graph here shows our actual year-to-date revenues and year-to-date expenditures. So, and it compares it to the previous year. So we have revenues in the first, so our revenues in purple are slightly above our revenues in blue locally and from the state. You can see federally, last year we had more money than this year at this time. That's because the first round of ESSER dollars, they just sent to us. We didn't have to claim back. So we had a large amount of federal dollars right up front last year. Now by the end of this year, when I show you this graph, it'll be much higher. It'll be about right here, over $1 million that we received from the federal government. So it'll be a lot higher this year in comparison to next year by the end of the year. Our expenditures, again, our salaries are higher than the previous year. We could expect that. Benefits as well. The last chart on the back shows our general fund unspent authorized budget, our UAB. We have some board goals for our UAB that we want that ratio of at least 10%. 5 to 15% is where you're expected to be, with never exceeding 25. We're projected to end the year at about 20.4%, slightly higher than last year, and that's a projection at this time. In the yellow boxes is our total expenditures. What I showed you earlier for expenditures and revenues were to date. So these are projected expenditures. We're expected to spend $18.9 million. We're expected to bring in a little over $20 million.
So that unspent balance, I'll call it, what do you, just increase expenditures slightly to slowly bring that down, or how do you,
Well,
what do you do to?
If you were in a completely normal situation, absolutely, Tom, that's what you do, because you got more money that you need to spend on kids. In our situation, we're getting some extra dollars right now than normal. That comes from our incentive.
One-time money.
Yeah.
Well, it's 3 years in a row
Right,
we'll
yeah,
get
yeah,
it though.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So we do want to spend it. We just have to be careful not to spend it on ongoing costs beyond there. So when I showed you the forecast for 5 years, we see some of this where we get to 2027, 2028, and we're starting to deficit spend, which is okay. That would be a time it's okay, because we'll have the fund balances to do that. So we're really just creating the structure right now that will support the staffing and everything that we need.
Because you said by 2027, whatever, it'd be okay, because
Yep.
we won't have that I'll call it one-time money
Right.
sharing anymore.
Yep,
It's
it'll
all-
be gone.
Okay.
And we'll continue to show you those things. Mary Beth and I did our certified budget workshop this morning, and our unspent balance, we actually predict to go down slightly next year, but not very much. It's pretty much a push, but
Once it starts to go negative,
Yeah.
it goes really quick.
it doubles every year.
Doubles.
If you overspend by 100,000 in this year and you don't correct it, that's 200,000 the next year, and so on. So you have to be careful and make sure you're managing that the right way. Also wanted to provide you guys with some legislative updates. You know, SSA, that's always a big one from us. That's the increase in our per pupil funding. Inflation obviously is something that it's driving everything up for everyone, including our people. And being able to keep up with salaries and other expenses is going to be a challenge for district. 2.5% was Governor Reynolds' recommendation for an SSA increase. It left the Senate, their recommendation at 2.25. The House has come back with 2.5. You know, our message to our legislators, 2.5 is not enough. You know, we really think 4% is what probably balances the boat. Now, we are in a very good position as a district this year because we had increased enrollment. So we were going to get new money whether there's an SSA increase or not, because we have more students that we're counting to generate those dollars. You know, many districts aren't in that situation where they have declining enrollment, so they're going to count less kids, get less money, and then a low SSA amount. So it's something that's very, very important to keep our education level where it is, and you know, to keep schools financially stable. A couple other things that I think are important legislative updates for education: the Teach Iowa Scholar Program, which allows for loans for teachers to be forgiven if they work in a low income and hard to fill area. They're discussing removing those parameters, which is great. That's something I think will help get young people into education. The Praxis Test, which is something that's designed to help help educators demonstrate the knowledge, content, pedagogy. They're looking to remove that, which I think is something that's also good for education. The Praxis is keeping good people out of education, but I don't know if it's improving the people who are in it. Any questions on financial update, legislative update?
Okay, we'll move on then to new business. First in our new business is sharing of the Director of Teaching and Learning, Curriculum Coordinator with Laverne.
So we received a message from Mr. Heiser at Laverne. Laverne would like to have the opportunity to share our Director of Curriculum Instruction, Mrs. Eischen, for the 2022-2023 school year. They would like to purchase .2 of her contract, which would be $17,550. Both schools would receive 3.0 FTE, so you get 3 additional students is what you get for that. At the current rate of this year, that would equal a little over $21,000. This is something that would help our reorganization. She would be able to work with their staff on what they're doing. Any of those staff who would be coming to our district, you know, help them in that transition, as well as the students. I would recommend sharing Mrs. Eischen with Laverne next year. I would also recommend a $5,000 stipend, not salary, but a stipend for her additional work. You know, they're going to purchase .2, but she's not going to do .2 less from us. You know, she's actually just doing .2 more work next year, is the reality of how that will go. And I think that is, you know, with the extra funding, is something that is appropriate, and I would recommend as well.
Okay, any comments or questions? All right, we need a motion then for approval for the sharing of the Director of Teacher and Learning, Curriculum Director, basically. And do we need to add that with a stipend, additional stipend in that?
That would be my recommendation.
Yeah. And with the additional $5,000 stipend. We need a motion.
Getting more money.
Yeah.
Because of the reorganization.
Yes.
A motion to approve the sharing of Director of Teacher and Learning with Laverne, $5,000 stipend.
Thank you, Brent. Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Corey. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move in then to our 612 tag position.
Prior to this year, we had two staff members who both partially worked in our Talented and Gifted program. In that structure, it was difficult to meet the needs of students and to meet with them on a frequent basis. We had a plan this year to involve someone full-time and then another person part-time at the high school, and that person at the high school took another job in a different district. So we got put in a situation where we weren't able to fill the other part as we intended to. Mrs. Brandt has been fulfilling the all-district tag responsibilities. If you remember back, we stipended her earlier in the year, and we knew we were going to have to make another plan. So in order to meet the needs of our tag students, we really need to be somewhere between 1.5 and 2.0 FTEs in tag. Our district tag allocation is over $110,000 a year. You know, that's what we're getting from the state to fund this program. That certainly is, you know, that's a 1.5 to 2.0 allocation. So I would recommend adding a 612 position. That position most likely will not be 1.0 tag. It would probably be 0.75, and they would have some other teaching assignments with it. Those wouldn't be able to be determined now because of their background and what they would be able to do. Mrs. Brandt works really well at the elementary, works really well with everything she's doing. She's set a really strong program down there that we didn't have previously. This person would work in the middle school, where that would be a lot of their time would be spent, and then also we need to revamp our high school tag program, and together they would work to do that. So I would recommend the addition of the 612 tag position for next year.
So you think it'll be kind of like 1.75 roughly?
For tag, yes.
tag,
Yeah. And we'd have, you know, whatever that other quarter-ish time is. You know, there's probably even, it could be half, but I would say it's more likely to be a quarter. And our funding certainly can handle that.
Where does the funding come from for this position? Just general fund?
From the state, it's per pupil funded. You know, it's not a property tax, it's directly from the state. Your tag allocation is based upon number of kids in your district.
So do we have to get this approved from the state, or can we just say?
We get the money anyway. You know, you carry it over if you don't spend it,
Carry over to where,
just into our general fund. But it's a categorical, so it has to be spent on talented and gifted. So we're not spending our allocation.
Looks like, do we have a
so
precise?
then if the benefit goes to general fund, is it just locked up, like you can't access it?
It is locked up categorically, yes.
Categorically, yeah.
It can only be spent on tag.
So have we built a balance then? That's.
We do have a carryover. I don't know what it would be exactly, but
It's not as much as it used to be, but I couldn't tell you right now, I can let you know.
okay.
I think it's important to give the students who need extra challenge, provide that for them. If we don't,
Yeah.
we're sliding those students.
Do you envision a pull-out I mean, I know for a while it was a pull-out program, and then later it was more kind of and providing some supplemental activities. What?
We are pull-out in the elementary right now, and the middle school. That's where we're most involved. At the high school level, it's probably more in an advisory type role, but we want to, you know, think out of the box and find other creative ways to help those students and meet their needs. Some of that might be more for advocating and working with their gen ed teachers in that case. But right now we are in a pull-out where they're going to meet with their tag teacher, projects, different things that they're doing to enrich the work that they're doing in the general classroom.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we need a motion then to add the additional 612 tag position.
So just to clarify, this this is a reoccurring expense that is funded from state dollars that we're already getting,
Yep,
that we're not spending.
correct,
We're not gonna have to pull anything else out of the general fund to pay for this
correct.
position. If it's, 3/4 time tag and it ends up being quarter time something else, then
And that's a general fund expense, that other quarter time.
do we have the tag money right now to pay for a full-time position?
110 allocation, yeah, yes.
As we said, I think we just got, last year, we just got too late in the year to add one.
Right.
We
No,
were
that's
gonna
fine, I
have
just
to.
get, I mean, if there's
Yeah.
a new expense, I'm just.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are good
We're
questions.
We're adding,
Yep.
Yep.
seems like a lot of different things, and that's just.
Yep.
Yep.
And, you know, there have been additions. You know, I think you're right in recognizing that. And then we also, you know, financially looked at that our revenues are far exceeding our expenses, which is some of the reason that we
The
can.
money needs to be spent on kids,
Yep.
I'm just, I don't wanna get into a position.
We don't wanna get to
Yep.
recurring, yep.
You're right.
Not have it.
Have this, so this makes sense, so I'll motion to approve a 6 through 12 tag position.
Okay. Additional one. Thank you, Brent. Do we have a second?
I will second the motion.
Thanks, Tom. We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments?
And this would be to start next year.
Correct.
Okay.
What is the applicant pool for a position like this?
Not sure. You know, I think, you know, you can take a job like this and then start on your tag endorsement, which I think most likely that would be the case. So there'll be, I would assume there'll be some in-house candidates because of that. Or people, an outside person might be interested and look at the position as well.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any further comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, business associate agreement.
This is a new agreement that came from the Iowa Department of Education. The purpose of this agreement is to fulfill this new requirement from the Department of Human Services to meet specific privacy and security requirements of sharing Medicaid data.
So it's something we just haven't done before, but.
Haven't done before, it is new. They just sent it to us a week or two ago, for us to approve to allow the sharing of some of that
Back.
private information.
Yeah.
So it's between the Department of Ed and the school district.
Correct. To allow our business associate to provide some of that information.
We'll make a motion to approve the business associate agreement.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Do we have a second?
One second.
Thank you, Andrea. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Can you?
Opposed? Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out exactly what this is. Can you explain this? What?
The business associate performs certain services on behalf of the agency that require exchange of information protected by HIPAA.
Yeah.
So-
Basically, it sounds to me like a delegate that we say is allowed then to transfer this HIPAA.
Information.
What HIPAA on individuals, on
Yeah.
diagnoses that special ed kids have?
This would be for Medicaid eligible students. So we're reimbursed, Medicaid eligible students on an IEP, we're reimbursed for certain services that are provided through either a behavior plan or a health plan. So this is the allowing us to share that information with them.
So maybe these kids would be special ed kids, that would be the money, like you said, we get reimbursed.
Yep.
Probably ones that have an IEP and,
Okay.
yep.
The
That's just,
diagnosis
in our business.
They
we
would,
have
to
have-
be Medicaid eligible, they would have to have a diagnosis.
What diagnosis would be billable for this?
It's not a diagnosis that's billable, it's the services that are provided that are billable. The only services that are reimbursable are something covered by a behavior plan, something covered by a health plan. And then there's some transportation you can be reimbursed for if it goes along with those
So
two
they could
plans.
look at what we're trying, we're asking for extra money because these kids on an IEP or they have a physical help, right? I mean, if it's-
Yeah, so maybe maybe, it could be as simple as a child has adult support with them to help them through their behavior plan through the day. That adult support, if the child's Medicaid eligible and has a diagnosis, we could then be reimbursed for part of that.
Is this information we're giving them already? Now
This
we
is
just-
kind of just a formality.
Yeah, this does not change anything that the district is doing. This is an agreement that the department sent to us for the first time. It's a new agreement. It's not changing our actions.
In our world, we have to have release of information for everything,
But it's
talking
not
to the
something new
MCOs.
that we
or
have
No.
to do.
Talking to,
No.
yeah. So I believe that's what this kind of, just formalities that, now I know we did have a motion and approval. Brent, I don't know if you had got the
No,
vote on
I
that.
don't know. I was just trying to ask.
Yours
a
was an
question.
approval vote then, right?
Well, it went so fast, but yes.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure that the motion is approved. I just wanted to
I
confirm.
was trying to read as you were,
Yeah.
I was trying to read the
Okay.
document as you were.
Just want to make sure the motion approves. Move forward then to the, all right, air handlers. And we have Jeff here to
Yeah.
answer any questions also.
Jeff can answer any questions. We've planned for new air handler units. So last year, remember, we put a new air handler unit above the gym. That replaced the original. So in our PEPAL plans are to put a new air handler unit above the band and the music and the art room on the other side and wrestling, and then on this side above the kitchen and ag room. So basically the two wings on the outside of the gym. The proposals are from Johnson Controls. They're who provided our work last year. They also have the state bid for those. We do have prior approval, which I provided for you, to pay for this project with ESSER dollars. Any questions in regard to the HVAC units for Mr. Gish?
And ESSER dollars are taxpayer money that the federal government's giving for COVID, right?
Correct, those are federal dollars.
Taxpayers.
It's just free.
What I couldn't figure out, is this 2 or 3, Jeff? How many units is
This
this?
is 7 units.
Okay, I didn't know how many
And
units we were.
This is 7 units, we did 4 this last time, we were 4
Okay.
in the gym.
Okay,
And this is 7, and we'll have probably another 6 left next year.
Okay.
And we'll be done.
So if this was a planned PEPAL expense,
yep.
why did we decide to use ESSER dollars for this when maybe the ESSER dollars could be used for extending the time we have interventionists or whatever?
Because ESSER dollars have to be used in 2 years.
Oh, 27 months, yeah.
Timing to that.
Gotcha.
Really good question.
Yep.
And
Th-
air
this-
handlers fit under ESSER dollars because it makes the air clean?
Could they move air? Yep, and that's why I provided the prior approval that I have. It is not unique that our district's using these dollars to put in air handler units. I would say most districts are doing that.
Can you explain an air handler to me as far as the difference between a air conditioner or?
Well, these air handlers are heat and air conditioning units. In our case, we have hot water, so there's a coil through there, and air is forced through that coil, heat a room, and then in the summertime, we have an air conditioning unit on the roof. That's also connected to the coil, so. It's like a home furnace, except we have hot water for the heat.
So this will make our gym air conditioning?
Our gym is
It
air
is.
conditioned.
Our new one last year was air conditioned.
Okay.
Two of those units we're putting were air conditioned, we're also air conditioning, the restroom on here is also getting air conditioned for
Okay.
future, if we just, turn that into some other.
If we repurpose that gym
Yes,
or that
and,
space.
The 3 shop classrooms are not air conditioned, and so they're gonna be air conditioned too, so.
Would you love an air conditioned wrestling room?
Comes to say for future repurposing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, any other further questions for Jeff or Joe or anybody? Okay, hearing none, then we need a proposal then, or a motion to approve the air handling units as proposed by Johnson Controls.
So moved.
Got it. Did you get that, Mary Beth?
Got Andrew, who else was it?
I'll second
Todd. All right. Andrea and Todd, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Back to the 2022-23 school calendar.
Yep, we had our public hearing. Remember, there's three things that you're approving. Start date, August 23rd, which is the first legal start date. Can't start school before that. And you're also approving end date, which is May 24th. The calendar has 1,111. I actually know it's 1,117, but I think there's another point in there. So there could be, those hours could go up. But you are also approving that this calendar is based on hours, that our students go to school at least 1,080 hours. Another option would be to approve a calendar based on days of 180 days. We have had a calendar based on hours for our students for a number of years. A couple specifics for the calendar. We are continuing with 1 day of professional development per month that we're doing this year. That's going very, very well. It's been a change that we think has increased the effectiveness of our professional development. We survey our staff after every one of those, and we have a lot of data to support that. The winter break starts on December 23rd and concludes on January 3rd, with the students' first day back January 4th.
So we're just, so that hours in the classroom, we
One-
can adjust.
Yeah, because you're approving start date, end date, and the 1,080.
Okay.
So Todd and I actually discussed the calendar earlier. I have some messages into the Department of Ed that I think they will allow me to count our day as 15 minutes more. So that's going to increase our hours on here. That's a good thing because as we have snow days and so on, if we don't go below 1,080, we don't necessarily have to make those up.
So right now, if I do the math, we're about between 4 and 5 built-in snow days,
Yeah, about that.
and maybe a little bit more with
Yeah.
snow conditions.
And that's about where we want to be. We miss almost as much in late starts than we do in snow days. Those really start to add up after a while, but to get to 4, 5, 6 of those, that we feel better about that.
So I hear questions from out in the public that, so we go according to hours for kids.
Yep.
So the teachers, if they're like built-in snow days, how do they make those up?
Yep, in their master contract, it says that snow day 1, 2, and 3 are forgiven. So that's the first 3. After that, they then can flex any hours that they spend outside a contracted day. So if they're in their building in August, setting up their classroom, preparing lessons, whatever, they can log that stuff. They're doing that now. They have logs in each building for that. Over Christmas break, they're working, they can log that. If they don't want to log any extra time, then they can just make those up at the end of the year as well.
So they have to put in a total of how many days is their contract then?
Their contract is 192 days.
Minus the 3 that could be forgiven.
Yep.
Depending on snow days. All right, any other questions? If not, we need to have a motion to approve the 2022-2023 school
Hey,
calendar.
Rodney, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I have
no,
one more.
go ahead.
So, I'm looking at April, and kind of historically what we've done, it seems like we've bounced back and forth around kind of some consecutive days
Yeah.
off, and then maybe a Good Friday off and that kind of thing.
Yep.
So,
When we're able, we like to take, Good Friday, the
is
Monday
that-
after.
Is that the 7th?
That's the 7th. It's late next year in the school calendar. So we're not able to take like March 3rd, which is the day off during parent-teacher conferences week. You know, it's not, we're not really able to connect that with the Easter break because of how late Easter is next year. When we are able to do that, we like to and give families an extended break of maybe Thursday, Friday through Monday.
So we did this last year, or this current year, right? Where we've got the 30th off for staff development and then the 31st and the 1st of April off. So it's kind of 3 consecutive days.
Yep,
in a
I think
row.
what we did there, Andrea, is we took this whole, the March whole day, and we put it with the Easter break. So kids were off one more day, you know, so they had the,
No, because Easter break's separate for us this year.
oh,
It's because it falls late this year too, it's like the
Okay.
15th. And my only thing is because we don't historically do like a full week of spring break. right?
correct.
And, it would be really nice to have at least the, like, kind of standardized built in, so families can plan on that, you know what I'm saying? So kind of either,
I do know what you're saying. It's difficult to standardize it as, you know, things move around in the calendar. I work with an advisory council every month. One of our standing agenda items is the calendar. So this has a lot of staff input in it. And I think they hear from, you know, families as well. There's a push for sure in the district to not go later in the year, not to go beyond Memorial Day. There's a strong push for that. So anytime we're adding any days in here, that pushes that back one way or another.
and I have no problem with that, you know, going in and being done before Memorial Day. Although we have 4 or 5 days built in, it looks like we've got a couple additional ones towards the end of May. But I'm just wondering, I mean, why can't you line up like April, that 7, 10, and 19 into a block of 3 days? And it's just a question, you
Yep,
know what I'm saying?
You could, that's an option you could do.
And I'm fine like approving the calendar as is, but I would just maybe ask the council
Yep.
next year to kind of take some of that into consideration.
And you remember tonight we're approving 1080 start and end. You know, so moving stuff in here is something that still can happen.
Perfect. That answers all my questions.
Good, that's great.
Very good
We wanna
questions.
do that,
Thank you.
so. Any further questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we need then a motion for approval.
I make a motion to approve the school calendar.
Thank you, Andrea. Who has second?
I'll second.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. We have a motion and a second to approve the 22-23 school calendar. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Off to the high school track fundraising request.
We have a fundraising request. This is turned in from both high school boys and high school girls track. They'll be collecting and donating new and gently worn shoes to the fundstoorgs.com. They're expecting to raise $2,000 to $4,000 to be used towards track and field equipment, uniforms, and warm-ups.
And then this organization resells shoes or something?
Yes.
Never heard of it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then how do we get the money? How does the money come to our kid or our program?
They come and get the shoes and pay us for whatever we give them. And then they must, you know, wherever they go from there.
Boy, better bring them pick up to our place.
Remember, the new and slightly used, that's probably the key word.
New and gently worn.
Yeah, or whatever.
Not stinky.
All right, we need a motion for this fundraising request.
Motion to approve the track fundraising request for
Yep. Thanks, Brent. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This is our first reading for the 600 series.
Yeah, no action on this item. I put the link in your general information. The 600 series is on educational programs. So we'll review that over the next month with the second reading being in March.
Okay. Always fun to look those over. Open enrollment, we have, you have a sheet in front of you there, and probably
Yep.
on the board.
There's two open enrollments broken into two. There's 4 for this school year. One student from Algona to Mason City, it's a family move, so that one would be required to approve by law. And then there's 3 into the district from North Union, 2 6th grade students and an 8th grade. The second group of open enrolls are for next year. We have our deadline in March. These are one 10th grade student from the West Bend Mallard to Algona School District, and then 2 Algona students to Iowa Virtual Academy. And these are all prior to the deadline.
Are these this year's grade or the grade that'll be in next year?
BN.
Okay.
The Iowa Virtual Academy, is that kind of, is that the whole school or is that kind of the COVID academy?
It's not the COVID Academy. There's a couple virtual school districts that have virtual school in Iowa, so you can open enroll to them, and attend them from home.
Because that, in the invoices, you'll see
CAM is
School,
that.
that's one of them,
Yeah,
correct?
both of these are to that one.
Okay.
Yep. Des Moines also has a virtual school academy. I think those are the 2 that were approved prior to COVID. Students throughout the state open enroll to those districts then.
And does 100% of the funding go then to the virtual district?
Yeah,
It's just a pass-through.
yeah,
The
yeah.
virtual district, though, it's like they're in front of the camera, it's like a webcam, it's interactive, like you're checked in. doing
Yeah,
it.
I don't know specifics or effectiveness, but it's accredited school.
Okay, any further questions? Hearing none, we need a motion then to approve the open enrollment request.
So moved.
Thank you, Todd, do we have a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on, final couple items, first new contracts.
Jonathan DePiro, high school custodian, replaces Roger Elbert, who resigned in January. Abby Kissinger, elementary EL teacher. Mrs. Kissinger has worked for us as a teacher associate and an EL teacher associate, and she's recently completed her teaching degree with an EL endorsement. And then Jasmine Carroll for 4th grade. This opening was from Mrs. Amy Welt moving to kindergarten. She's a veteran of 4.5 years. She was hired mid-year. Has been working in the Fairmont district. So really excited about those 4
And on our
additions.
sheet, we have a volunteer track coach.
And Adriana Jensen, thank you.
Okay.
Volunteer high school girls track coach. She did that for us last year as well.
All right. Need a motion to approve the new contracts.
I make a motion to approve new contracts.
Thanks, Tom. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Gloria. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And now the resignations.
We have 5 resignations. Roger Elbert, high school custodian. Jordan Buss, 9th grade girls basketball. Lisa Hardman from bus driver. Drew Severson from 7th grade girls basketball. Both that and Mr. Buses are pending suitable replacement. And Sandra Verhels from food service.
Okay, motion to approve the resignations then.
So moved.
Thank you, Jay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brent. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Nothing else on the agenda. I thank everybody for all your time tonight, and we need a motion then for adjournment. All right, do we have a second?
I will second.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Stay warm.
Is there one,